have some questions.
Okay, so I'll start. I'll give you the background and you can kind of decide what's going on. So first of all, thank you for coming on and some background on this. I'm giving a presentation on dim sum. So to kind of bring people together and to, I don't know what it is. It's, I guess, to share a little bit. So I'm in this group, and every month they want a speaker to introduce a food to the group and to talk about, you know, if you went to a restaurant of that type, how would you order? So I quickly volunteered for dim sum, how to order dim sum. And I'm glad I did, because soon after a bunch of people signed up and they're like, no, sorry, James has taken it. And so I was doing that. And when I posted some questions on my Facebook, I was asking some questions, some international questions about dim sum, one of my friends responded, hey, like, I'd like to, like, can I join this presentation? I'm like, you can't join the work one, but I'll do a public one and we can kind of cover the same information and, you know, and have some fun. So you're part of this fun and just kind of sharing and, you know, if you have any tips and whatever. So you won't be put on the spot. There is a quiz, yes, but it's all good. Anyone, yeah, no prizes, but maybe we can just go for dim sum. We can all meet up. Okay.
In Australia.
In Australia, yeah.
Australia, yes, you're welcome to come to Australia.
We will have dim sum.
Can I just give you guys a preface this? James is recording this, so if you do not want to have your face shown, feel free to turn off your video. He may have plans to upload this on the internet.
Okay, but your face will not be the main thing, but okay. But certainly want to respect everyone's privacy, so that's all good. And this is going to be kind of interactive. Feel free. Andrew's going to host and co-host, and you know, we've talked about food a lot. And I have a presentation. This might take 15-20 minutes. If you need to drop off, feel free. If you want to chime in, you know, there's a small group, so feel free just to kind of chime in. Actually, before we do that, maybe yeah, we'll do that. So I gave you some background on dim sum ordering. I think everyone here has had dim sum, and maybe you guys are like semi-experts on this as well. So over time, I've just put some thoughts together and kind of to kick off where this is going. And let me stand so you can kind of see a little bit of what's going on. Andrew, do you want to kick this off, since this is a meal that you actually had?
Okay, so recently I was visiting my family in Canada, and my sister got very excited to take the whole family out for dim sum because my parents were there, her kids were there, her mother-in-law, her aunt-in-law. There was a huge group of us, so she was very excited to take us to this dim sum restaurant, and we naively left her in charge of ordering. And so this photo that you see here is what was left over after everyone had already finished eating. And just as a point of fact, those steamers that are stacked are also full underneath. Now, in her defense, this particular restaurant had massive portion sizes, like unexpectedly large. So for example, if you look at the eggplant, like the size of those eggplants were like the size of my forearm, and there were 4 of them, which is more than is typical. So she was quite embarrassed, and I quoted to her, as I often quote to people in eating situations, James's ordering algorithm. So if you've ever eaten with James in a group environment, he'll typically go around and he'll be like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hungry are you and what's your budget? And based on those numbers you give, he will order the perfect quantity. So this was a learning lesson for my sister. And I think part of what inspired this talk that James is about to give us.
Indeed. Thank you. And the food looks really good. The colors were great. It was on Facebook, and I thought, let me just pull that in and we can kind of enjoy. All right, we are in quiz time, and I think there's a total of 9 points that you can get. So I'll kind of read them through, kind of think of answers. We'll just take them up and people can volunteer answers. Or I mean, if you know everything and you're an expert, then we can let someone who doesn't know maybe take a guess. That might be kind of fun as well. If you think you kind of know, you can certainly volunteer. And there's 3 or maybe 4 of us there. Feel free to unmute if you want to speak in. You can also tap in the chat if you just want to plug in your answer. That's also good as well. And we'll go one at a time, and then so people can kind of chat, put things in the chat if you think you know. So first is, what does dim sum mean literally? Dim sum. And I'm I'm certain.
Annette, you're doing Mandarin lessons with James, so I feel like you should be the one to jump in and respond to this.
And maybe Hussein knows. I don't know if we've had this explanation. Certainly Linda will know.
I don't know if I've ever actually done a formal lesson with James. It's just been an ongoing correction since I came back. Not like this, like this. Oh, I went the well, isn't it like not brunch, but like light lunch or light lunch or
light lunch-ish? That's kind of what it means. Linda, do you want to share what you know it means? Dim sum.
For me, dim sum means. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. Dim sum means snacks. So I think there's so it's like small plates of small things. But dim sum usually when it's used outside of this type of meal like if you're looking at a bakery or you're looking at some other food places, then dim sum actually means snacks.
Good, thank you. Snacks. So dim, the actual words dim and sum, dian, xing in Mandarin, like dot, heart. I've heard it translated as like heart's delight. But Linda's absolutely correct. Like when you use it in a sentence, you know, 吃点心, eat 点心, it's to have like small snacks. And dim sum is normally served in small portions, hence, you know, why dim sum is one way that people speak about it in English and some other languages. Now, I was kind of surprised as I, did some research. It's like not everyone refers to this in non-Chinese languages or in Chinese languages as dim sum. So next quiz question, and you can kind of self-mark. I mean, name 3 places, countries, or cities where people actually more often say yum cha and not dim sum. And we haven't defined yum cha, but yum cha is drink tea. Like drink tea. Let's go drink tea. When really they're going to drink tea and eat things. It's because, but drink tea is the predominant way of saying it. So put into the chat, or you can just unmute and kind of call out if they're.
I feel like it's unfair for me to answer because I already know all the questions to all of the quiz, but I do feel comfortable answering this one because I'm in Australia and I know that in Australia we say yum cha. So this question I think is inspired on a conversation that we had with each other about how nobody here says dim sum. And in fact, if you say dim sum, they'll think that you're mispronouncing dim sim, which is a giant fried dumpling that you can get from any gas station here, petrol station, which I actually think is just a misnomer on dim sum. It was probably just a Chinese guy immigrated here years and years ago, started making these giant dumplings. Well, they probably started out regular dumplings, but then over time just got bigger and bigger as everyone else started to copy. Because I think part of the art of dim sum is making everything bite-sized, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, yum cha, we say.
That's really neat. That's actually a local Australian thing that we don't have here in Canada, right?
Yeah, we don't have dim
yeah, that's really cool.
I don't think dim sims happen anywhere in the world. It's a very Australian thing.
Nice cross-country exchange here.
So when someone goes to Australia and looks for dim sum, they'll say, go to a gas station. And you're like, where is it?
And then they'll be like, what's a gas station? You mean a petrol station?
Okay. All right. Any other guesses? Yum cha. Instead of dim sum.
I only knew Australia. It's funny, I recently made a new friend from Australia and he told me yum cha. I was like, oh, wow. Like, so I thought I knew something that nobody else did. But really everybody else knows about Australia. So I'll guess New Zealand just because it's next door, but I have no clue.
It could be. That's kind of an interesting thing. I wonder if there are dim sims in New Zealand. Any others? Countries, cities? So, okay, people know. So Japan, my American Chinese friend who moved to Japan and loves dim sum, she's like, oh, here they all say yum cha wo tabemasu. But I have used the translated word for dim sum, tenxin, and they know what that means. So I think yum cha may be more common. So in reality, what it is, yum cha is a verb. So let's go yum cha, and then the thing you eat is the dim sum. So if you use it, let's go eat dim sum. In English, you just say, let's go eat dim sum. If you say, let's go yum cha, that means let's go and drink tea, which is the equivalent of going somewhere, drinking tea and eating things. So just a little bit of background. I did some research to kind of figure out, like, what does this mean?
在
What's
台
number
湾他们在做什么？
Shema, go ahead, Anish.
台湾他们在做什么？dim sum 吗？在台湾
在台湾，
他们也说 dim sum 吗？我不知道。
点心 my Taiwan cousins, they all say, let's go 饮茶 to drink tea. But if we say 吃点心, they know what it means. So they're kind of used to both, but by default, they will see drink tea, 饮茶. So if you're speaking Chinese and you want to be as authentic as possible, I would say 饮茶. Friend from Hong Kong, it's like, we all say yum cha. They don't say dim sum. Oh, Hong Kong is the third place. Like in Hong Kong, they don't say, let's go have dim sum. It's like yum cha. So get ready for your trips and you can say, hey, yum cha, yum cha. So dim sum might be a little bit of a, for Chinese people, something that is not common and they may be confused as well.
So it's Japan, Australia, and Hong Kong.
Yeah, those were the three. In the Netherlands, they say dim sum. In England, I think they say dim sum. Canada, US generally. Yeah, people, and in many places they don't have dim sum. So I don't know. They're like, we don't know what to call it in Iran, and they just say Chinese food, but that's like sweet and sour. Oh no, maybe not pork, since they don't eat too much pork in Iran. Number 3, what country and province?
Actually, James, actually, a small point, not sure if it's worth mentioning, but I think it also depends on, the parties of the people talking. Here in Toronto, if we're speaking between everybody's a Cantonese speaker, then we'll say we'll go yum cha. But if I'm speaking to somebody who does not speak Cantonese, who's like speaks English, then the more commonly understood phrase is we'll have dim sum.
Okay.
So it also depends on the people who's having a conversation, what type of language that they're capable of speaking.
This is good info. Thank you for sharing that. Who could have thought that there was so much behind these words? Dim sum and yum cha?
And so it depends. But if you say, okay, well, if you just pick a random guy on the street from Toronto and say, is it yum cha or dim sum, then they will say dim sum.
Yes.
You could go with that definition. So.
Yeah, my
Good.
experience is the same as Linda's because my dad is Cantonese speaking, and growing up, we always said yum cha. And it was over time and experience that I realized no one else says yum cha. So we learned to say dim sum. So then when I first came to Australia and realized they call it yum cha as well, I was like, oh, that feels comfortable and normal to me.
Cool.
Nice. All right, number 3. What country and province is dim sum from? For 2 points. This one, I don't know if it's tricky, but
Ding, 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 ding.
I'm going to answer, which I know this is a misconception I've always had, because I always thought that dim sum came from Hong Kong, but I guess I'm clearly very wrong in that.
from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Given
That's a
that
fair
it's
guess.
The way it's pronounced, this is a misconception I've had for like 25 years.
Okay. Anyone else?
It's Guangzhou. I think
Guangzhou.
it's Canton, Guangzhou.
Okay, so the capital of Canton Province, and I have a map of China on the left, and that part in red. If you go into the center and then go to the ocean, like kind of find the center of that red part is Guangzhou, the capital. If you were to draw a line to the ocean, that's where Hong Kong is. So Hong Kong certainly is, Cantonese speaking, and so they have a lot of cultural affinity and language affinity with the rest of Canton Province or Guangdong Province. So dim sum, many people think comes from this area of China. Now, as I was researching, they're like, actually, dim sum, when you think of it broadly, dim sum means like these snacks. There are actually, dim sum comes from all over China. Every province has its own snacks. So if you were to travel in China and say, I want to go for dim sum, you'll be able to find dim sum, but it might be different dim sum. So the dim sum in Canada that we're normally accustomed, I guess normally accustomed to, with the shrimp dumplings and various other things, is Cantonese. But as April, you were saying earlier with the like Shanghai 369 or some other number, Shanghai, which is not
Shanghai dim sum, that restaurant in Toronto. We were talking about that too. So
right.
delicious.
They have dim sum in the name, but they will actually serve different things. So what really happened was each region created dim sum dishes, and the one that created the most turned out to be from Canton province, and that kind of spread as like that's dim sum, but in reality there's other dim sum. So soup filled dumplings are not from Canton province. If you go to a Cantonese dim sum restaurant, I do not recommend ordering soup filled dumplings because that's not their dim sum. They've kind of borrowed it, and usually it's not as good. So question number 4, approximately how many dim sum dishes originated from the provincial capital? Here is Guangzhou, the capital of Canton. So how many dim sum dishes originated from that to the closest 100? Because in reality, dim sum was everywhere, but most of the dim sum dishes innovated from Guangzhou. So everyone can take a guess, type in, or call out.
My guess was 800, literally just because 8 was a lucky number and I didn't know what else to say.
The same.
Wow.
You should take a
I would
guess.
say 100. I can't imagine there being that many, but maybe I just haven't experienced the full thing. But for me, you're lucky to go to a dim sum restaurant and have a menu that's more than maybe 3 or 4 columns.
Be
and then
paralyzed by
20.
choices.
Yeah, 20 things each. So that's about 80 items. That would already be like, wow, this is a great restaurant, but so many choices. So, okay, maybe 100.
Hussein, what's your guess?
I was also thinking of 100.
April, what's yours?
I mean, just given that the rounding is to the hundreds, I was going to go more on like the 500 range, but no.
So
Mohammed,
how much
do you have
did
a
you
guess?
say?
500.
500.
Ooh.
Using logic of closest 100. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and for sure, like I know that I've been to some restaurants that have menus more than 100.
Mohammed, what's your guess?
So can you hear me?
Oh, it's Mehdi. Yeah, Mohammed. Hillary, welcome.
It's Mehdi. I will update my name in a couple of seconds, in a couple of minutes. So here is the thing. I would say at least, at the time, it has been at least like 200 to 300, because right now in a dim sum menu, we have 70, 80 items sometimes. In a large dim sum menu, we have like 60, 70 items. So at the time, I would say the origin would have been like at least a couple of 100, maybe 300 or something like that.
Yeah.
But it has been reduced to what we have today, in typical dim sum restaurants in downtown Toronto. That is just my thought.
Okay,
So
great.
it sounds like our guesses are ranging from 100 to 200 to 500 to mine was 800, but they're all wildly higher than any of us expected to guess. What's the answer?
1,000. And I was surprised to hear 1,000, but when you think of it,
So
it's
that's 1,000. Okay.
like, 10 hundreds from Guangzhou. And that's a lot, but even in Toronto, you see kind of innovative dim sum dishes that you've never seen anywhere. So I'm sure there's like lots of innovation, and then the most popular ones get deconstructed down to 80. So, I mean, people, like you see the menu and there's just so much more that you go. So maybe in China, it's worth exploring. Okay, here's something. I was like, when did dim sum originate? So in what century did dim sum originate? Feel free to guess and chat. Hillary, I saw your response. You don't have your headset, which is fine. But if anyone has a guess on century.
1500 BC.
1500 BC. So 3,500 years ago. Good, thank you. Any other guesses?
16th century.
16th century, good.
Holy smokes.
500 years ago. Anish, do you have a thought?
16th century.
16th century. Okay, so based on these answers, it seems like, and Andrew, what was your guess?
I think my guess was in the 1800s.
Okay, so
because James did this quiz on me like a week ago.
the So I thought dim sum came from like ancient sages and when they're drinking tea and emperors and all this kind of stuff. And I would have guessed, you know, a couple thousand years ago, but in reality, it's the 19th century, it's the 1800s. So relatively a new food. I think that was kind of interesting, and that and so we're eating like fairly modern food that ancient Chinese people did not really get a chance to eat. So take the opportunity to
James, is it the food that's modern, or is it just the kind of the idea of putting them together as the small snacks?
Well, that's a good question. That will need more research. That's going to be dim sum ordering 201. I will.
James, this was the logic behind my guess in the 1800s, because dim sum, everything is bite size and it's like carefully packaged, and each bite is labor intensive. So I was like, it cannot have been too long ago when like people had to do farming and hunting and gathering and stuff. So it's more recent because people have more time on their hands.
This makes sense. It's a fairly sophisticated food. The flavors are very kind of nuanced. Things go together, steaming, like deep fry.
The flour, the pastry that's involved, and so there's a good, you know, so a dependable harvest.
Just out of
I was
curiosity.
more picturing it being a food of the wealthy. So I'm imagining, you know, kind of back in the 16th century, the very wealthy, you know, they have their servants making these very intricate things to show off at banquets and stuff like that.
That sounds romantic.
It does.
It sounds interesting. We could do a movie and just kind of create when we think it, who ate it. It's like, ooh, dim sum.
Totally.
It's so exclusive, and we're like, oh, but we can get it anytime we want. Okay, that's good.
I'm gonna mute everybody just so that James can keep pushing this along. You're welcome to unmute yourselves and chat, or if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. But for now, I'm going to mute everybody. Mehdi, you have your hand up though. Did you want to jump in? Oh, and we've also had somebody else joining. So James, feel free to take it away. Unless, Mehdi, did you have something you wanted to jump in with?
I just have a question because I joined a little bit late. So I have just a quick question. I understand that we discussed the origin of dim sum, the geographic origin of dim sum. But today, is dim sum recognized as a Hong Kong food or a Chinese food? In the world
Oh,
today,
sorry, James, you were included in the people that I unmuted. You can unmute yourself, James.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, what did you say?
So I said I understand that the origin is from Canton, China, and all over China, as you mentioned. But in today's world, is dim sum recognized as a Hong Kong type of food or Chinese type of food?
So I would say it's probably evolved into two main dim sums. The predominant is Cantonese dim sum, and when I talk about dim sum in this discussion, I'm referring to Cantonese. But very significantly, there is northern style dim sum, like at Asian Legend in Toronto, or Shanghai-based soupil dumplings, churros, Chinese churros without sugar, a bunch of wheat pastries with like savory wheat pastries with meat, with onions, and different things. So if we haven't had the other type, Mehdi, we can try it. And anyone here who wants to kind of try the other dim sum, we can do that. So there's two types, Cantonese and northern style.
Yeah, thank you so much. And one more question. Like in the dim sum restaurants that we have in Toronto, are typically people who are chef from Hong Kong, or they're Chinese? I'm just curious. Like the people who work at dim sum restaurants.
Yeah, I think the chefs at one point were probably from Hong Kong. And then when China opened up immigration in the late 1990s, 2000s, then I think there are more cooks and chefs from mainland China. I also think, and this is my theory, which I'll just drop now, I think most dim sum, especially the steamed ones, are frozen. I don't think they're made fresh in restaurants. That's a new theory. At one point I was like, oh, they're making it fresh. Now I'm like, that's too much work. They're getting frozen. And I tasted frozen dim sum that someone said has, that tastes like restaurant dim sum. And I tried it and I thought, yeah, the taste is close. So we'll give tips if people want to get frozen and just eat it at home at their leisure. It's not much cheaper, just slightly, but certainly for convenience and doing it. And that can be a whole thing, just how to make dim sum at home by knowing where to get them. You can't get them in regular grocery stores. They're specific places that have restaurant quality dim sum. Cool. We're going to move ahead. It's 5:35. I think a bunch of slides I'm going to kind of go through quickly so you can get the meat of kind of my thinking on how to order dim sum. 5 steps. So anyone?
James, can I just jump in real quick because we've had a couple of new people join us.
Yes.
So welcome and thank you for coming to James's Dim Sum Ordering 101 seminar. Can I call it a seminar?
Sure.
In my experience of having eaten dim sum with James, he is the #1 best person that you want to be sharing a table with because of this logic that he's about to take us through. So thanks for joining us and take it away, James.
All right. Thank you for the setup, Andrea. First thing, restaurant choice. There are generally 2 types of dim sum restaurants, Cantonese dim sum restaurants. Some have carts on the left. See, usually they're, women who push the carts on. I'm wondering if I've seen any men push carts. I don't think I have. Pushing carts with food. Some have, steaming capabilities. Some are just carts with things on it. And as they go around, you essentially point and pick, and they're calling out what it is. And usually they'll be saying it in Cantonese. So if you don't know the Cantonese name, and it might be harder, but certainly when they come, you can just kind of motion to them to lift open the lids and peek. When I could not order dim sum in Cantonese, I would say, open, I want to see, and then you'd shake your head and they'd frown at you and then they'd move on. So certainly that's fun. And I have it's fun, it's quick, it's kind of a, interesting thing. And then menu is the other one. And that in Toronto, it kind of emerged, I think maybe in the 90s at some point, it emerged. And now my preference, and I'll just move out of the way, the expert choice in my view is to go somewhere that does menu ordering. And there's kind of 2 or 3 main reasons. One, the food comes out hot. Carts sometimes are circulating for 5, 10, 15 minutes. If it's steaming while it's still in the cart, it might get mushy. Some of the stuff you don't want to overcook. Carts may overcook it. Second thing is, if there's no heat source in the carts, then it might cool down. So when you get it, it's a little cold. So from an eating perspective, carts are suboptimal. I do not recommend it unless you want to try it for fun. And then in that case, there are ways, when the carts come out, you want to get the food as quickly as you can from those carts to get fresh, hot stuff, certainly before it runs out. The popular dishes tend to run out when it's making its run through the restaurant. So sitting strategically in the restaurant, positioning near the kitchen, that's where the dim sum comes out. If you're close there, you'll get first dibs. So I sometimes say, oh no, we don't want to sit there. We want to go up front. And I've been in a restaurant where it's been really crowded and had to wait 45 minutes. And I had to rush up to the kitchen and get food coming out, and throngs of people followed me. They're like, oh, he's going. And then you get your dim sum. And then after 5 minutes, all the food's gone and they have to go back in. So carts, problematic and requires a little bit of, motivation and perseverance to get what you want. Menu's much easier. You kind of pick and choose what you want. Some of them have pictures, and I've been to some restaurants that have pictures, which are great if you don't know what you want, or generally they expect you to know what to order based on the name. So I will have a sample menu later, but do recommend the menu. And the side question from Hussein, I don't know when sushi originated, but I think it's long ago when they were fishing and they put it on rice to kind of pack and keep. And I'm guessing hundreds of years ago, but certainly we can look that up and we can have a whole discussion on sushi from what I've learned from my travels in Japan. All right, one other key question, and I've eaten dim sum either on my own and in groups of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably up to 14 and maybe even up to 20 where we had multiple tables going on. And what I've realized is there are better numbers of people to have dim sum with than others. So in decreasing rank, here's what I recommend. The best, and I think an excellent option, is to go with, including yourself, 4 people. So 4 people at a table. A lot of dim sum dishes are split into 4. Some of them are split into 3. So certainly, it's like a multiple of 12. You could do it, but 4 generally works out. If you have something that only has 3, you can ask for scissors or get a knife and cut in half. And some people can, eat less of it, or maybe someone doesn't want it. And, it's easy to share with 4. Another strong option is 6 or 3. So generally these even numbers, some things are in 3s, some things are in 6s. It's kind of a, an easy number to sit around with. Possible good options, 5 or 7 to 12. 5 is odd, so you get a dish for 4. 4 people get it. If a 5th person wants it, you have to order yet another dish, and everyone's trying to split. I don't know if people have experienced this, and I don't know how often people think about it. Certainly, if you're going with friends and it's whoever wants to go, I mean, you may not have this chance, but if you want to do your own ordering and try to do it and make it easy, 4 is great. 6 and 3, a large number 5 or 7 to 12. You can go as a pair, and I've done it. You don't get as much variety. One of the great things about dim sum is trying a bunch of different things. So 2 is good. 13, if you're sitting at a round table with 13, it becomes a little impersonal. You're talking to the people next to you, and it's a little hard to interact. But you may have a lazy Susan in the middle, which might be good to help the food to spread. It becomes a bit more chaotic and hard to manage, but certainly that's possible as well. Poor option I'll put down as 1. Certainly you can get a couple dishes. There are some places that cater for one person. They will give you 1 dumpling of like 6 different types and kind of put it all together, and you get to, you pay 1 price. So certainly there are ways to do it, but generally it's not common, so you might have to look for that. Mehdi has a question. Why is dim sum less recognized compared to sushi? I don't know. And is it? Good question.
Sushi is more portable. It just needs refrigeration and easier to make.
Yeah, easier to make is probably it. Dim sum, I think, requires some kind of refined elements, and it's there's steam, there's other fried and stuff, and sauces that mix. So I think it's sushi has sauces as well. I think sushi in North America, or at least in Canada, became popular kind of with the rise of Japan. Dim sum, it's a good question. I would, growing up, dim sum was more popular than sushi. Sushi became popular in the late 80s and 90s, and then started to expand in the 2000s. So maybe it just depends on your experience. 7 is best, combination of 4 and 3. Oh, that's an interesting concept. We can apply some math to that. 8 dumplings. And you go for 7. All right. Well, thank you for sharing those little tips. Any comments or anything on like numbers? It's kind of maybe somewhat minor.
Since I've moved to Australia, my whole family's in Canada. So when we go for Yumcha, there's my whole family. There's 5 of us plus kids. So like 5 is a good option. But since I've moved to Australia and it's just me and my partner, I will say that 2 is a less superior number of people. And it's exactly because of this variety thing that James mentions. In terms of the poor options of that poor lonely person, I love knowing that there are what sounds like tasting platters at certain places you can go, because that's a lovely option, because there's nothing wrong with being single and alone.
And if people want suggestions on places in Toronto for these single options, I know of a few places that I've seen. We can kind of seek those out, but they might be in the suburbs. I didn't see anything downtown Toronto. All right. When to go? Also a small point, 30 seconds on this. So dim sum's generally a lunch thing. They're smaller bites. Most places open like 9 a.m. They go to late afternoon, 4 p.m. Peak time is around 11:30 to 1:30. Places, not during the pandemic, but certainly pre-pandemic, and now they're starting to have specials to attract people on off-peak hours. So most of the specials are before 11. A few places offer specials in the late afternoon, like 2:30, maybe 3 o'clock. And so an example might be, order everything by 10:45, and the cost of a small dish equals the cost of a medium dish, which equals cost of a large dish. The going rate now is around $5 for small, $6 for medium, $7 large, plus or minus $1 or $2, but probably pretty close to that. Some other places pay by 11 or pay cash by 11, or you get a slight discount with cash. The ones I like are order by 10:45. Because I don't really want to wake up at 9 o'clock and go for dim sum like really early. And if you wait too long to pay, then all of a sudden the price jumps, and that's kind of not so good. But certainly going at lunch is fine. Some places the lunch is the busiest period, and I have been to places where they offer discounts before, and it's really busy in that 9 to 11 a.m. period, and then because it's such a great deal before, traffic drops off and lunch is actually not very busy, which seems kind of a little odd, and they could probably adjust a little bit, but you know, just something you may or may not know of. I have had people, I know Mehdi has said, oh, let's go for dinner dim sum. So it's possible, and a few places offer it, but uncommon, and I actually would not recommend it. When they go during lunch period, their whole operation is geared towards making dim sum. They're actually dim sum chefs, which are different than dinner chefs in a Cantonese restaurant. The typical restaurant will hire a dinner chef that makes noodles and dishes and proteins and vegetables, and then the dim sum chef, maybe if they're making it in-house, they're folding them, or it's like a steaming operation, and you know, everything's a little different. And there's certainly things that they will make in-house and cut and fry up and do that kind of stuff. So if you're getting it off hours, if it's a place that doesn't specialize in dim sum throughout, and most places do not specialize in dim sum, they will have dim sum for lunch, and then a Chinese menu, Cantonese menu for dinner. In these places, if you go at dinner time, you will get subpar dim sum at dinner time. I do not recommend it. Mehdi did mention Rosewood's open till 3 a.m. So certainly there are places to go, and maybe it's not all that bad. So if you find a place that, you know, that offers it, it's rare, and if you love it, then certainly go for it. And thank you for typing in your comments, and any comments and questions, please add. So expert choice, 10 a.m. if you want like early bird, or 11 a.m. if you want to beat the rush and just go during regular hours. Weekdays are generally cheaper than weekends. Weekends are usually really busy. One other rule of when to go, I like to look in restaurants where there are Chinese seniors. Seniors look for the best deal, and they kind of know the best time to go. So if you see a lot of people in their 70s and maybe 80s eating, then you can feel like you're in good company.
For the most part, if you don't actually ask about, are there any specials or early bird, will they just charge you regularly just because wish a hanbun waigwaran kind of thing?
If you go during the published hours, I think they will honor it. And the menus that I've seen, they indicate the specials in Chinese and English. I've never seen them only do it in Chinese. So I don't think you will be discriminated against as a non-Chinese speaker. Certainly that was my fear at one point before I learned Chinese, and I was like, I need to learn Chinese so I don't get ripped off in these Chinese restaurants. Now that I can speak it, I'm like, oh, well, a lot of these places, they're actually not ripping you off. They're just, you know, so I think they will be transparent. But certainly if it happens, let me know, and I'll, you know, in my YouTube video, we'll call them out and shame them so that they maybe can change their process. Who knows? Yeah, cool. At one point I was eating dim sum pre-pandemic for like 12 to 15 with Mehdi at Dim Sum King downtown. We get like 12, 15 bucks going early. Pandemic, they cut off they stopped all of their early birds and raised prices. And certainly dim sum now is, you'd expect to pay around 25 bucks for one, maybe 20, maybe 30. All right, so we all saw the picture at the beginning where, and if people didn't see it, let me just quickly go back to this picture of excess dim sum. Ordered in Vancouver. I don't know what the restaurant was, but Andrea's sister ordered all that, and there's a lot of extra. And so I apply a quantity algorithm, and it's pretty basic. So if you don't remember anything, then the key number is 2.5. This is the default scaling factor per person. If 4 people are going, 2.5 times 4 is 10. You should order 10 dishes. If 10 people are going, 25 dishes. Sometimes, you know, there's small dishes for large people, for not large people, but large numbers of people. You may wonder, like, how much do I order? Do you keep ordering until your pen runs dry or what? And that's, you know, unless you have an algorithm, ordering for, you know, larger numbers of people can be hit and miss. So this number I've tested over like a couple decades, and it works. So 2.5, and this is when the average hunger level of people is 7 to 7.5. And sometimes I will actually ask people, please rate how hungry you are on a scale of 1 to 10. If I get a bunch of 6s, then I'm like, okay, people just want to kind of pick and they don't want to eat too much, then lower it to 2. So instead of getting 10 dishes, 2 per person, 2 dishes per person. So the scaling factor, instead of getting 10 dishes for 4 people, you might get 8. And based on this, that will work as well. And then conversely, if you get a bunch of people, maybe they've just gone skiing and they come back and they're like, oh my God, I'm famished. It's like, okay, we have to order more. So usually 3 times 8, Now I have been with some friends and somehow we're like feeling really hungry and we're like, no, let's do 3.5 or 4. So certainly you can push it up if it's like, yeah, you just feel it.
Sorry, James, I just want to pause you for a sec because you're talking about a lot of numbers and not everyone digests numbers in the same way. So I just want to clarify, there's 2 different numbering systems that James is talking about right now. There's the hunger scale. How hungry are you on a scale of 1 to 10? I'm 7.5 hungry, which is average hunger. 7.5 hunger equals a person who would eat 2.5 dishes. So for example, if I'm more than 7.5 hunger, I may eat 3 dishes. Or if I'm less than 7.5 on a hunger scale, I might only eat 2 dishes. So we want to clarify whether you're talking about the hunger scale or the number of dishes, just to be real clear.
Thanks. And you may have questions. It's like, well, how much do I eat versus like someone else? Maybe I don't eat a lot. So, I mean, if you're able to gauge like how many calories, I don't know. Those questions are hard. So I just do hunger level. And then there's some judgment call as well. If you know that someone doesn't eat a lot, or, you know, seniors tend to eat less than, you know, maybe adults. Teens maybe, you know, eating more. If men tend to eat more than women. So there are these adjustments. So this kind of assumes like an average group, but certainly you may want to adjust it. So hunger ways you might want to adjust it on the right side. The first is hunger level. 2.5 is the average, and you can adjust it up or down. Seniors, like with my folks, they will eat probably half of what one person eats. So they might only eat one equivalent of 1 dish or 1.5. Children, sometimes I don't even order for. You can kind of just round up. And then Andrew mentioned at the beginning, certain restaurants actually have bigger portions of food. So their shrimp dumplings are jumbo. And when that happens, that's when you can actually order too much, because one, you might actually feel quite full. So portion sizes, if it's and it could depend. Sometimes they're like more economy restaurants where they want to size up, or what I found is in some of the more upscale restaurants where they charge more, they actually will give you more so that it's, you know, it kind of works out. So for those cases, I would, you know, high-end restaurants, you may want to decrease by 0.5 rather than get 2.5 dishes per person. You might only get 2 dishes per person. So certainly larger portions, getting 8 dishes for 4 people might be enough.
James, can you walk us through your example maybe in your notes?
Sure, I can do that. Thank you for asking. So example 1, you're going with a total of 4 people, including yourself, of average hunger. How many dishes should you order? 4 times the magic scaling number of 2.5, 4 times 2.5, get 10 dishes. And the dishes are small, medium, or large, and they will indicate usually on the menu, and they'll have an S, an M, or an L. Sometimes they will have an XL, extra large. Those cost more, you get a little bit more, or like they'll write the word special in English, and those are like half a full dish. So those ones might count as 1 dish or 1.5 dishes, sometimes 2 dishes. So I don't usually order too many of those, but you can count it as 1 or maybe 1.5. Example 2, you have 2 seniors, 1 6-year-old child, and then 6 seniors, child, and then you have 6 more people. 4 of them are very hungry, and 2 of them are just moderately hungry. So total of 9 people. So here's what it is, and this is like line 3 below, solution 2. So with 2 seniors, each senior will probably eat about 1.5 or maybe 1. So 1.5, so let's make that 3 dishes. If you have a 6-year-old, make it a 1 dish. So that's 3 plus 1. And then for the 4 hungry people, 4 times 3. So rather than using 2.5, use a 3. So 4 times 3 will give you 12. And then for the 2 people who are of average hunger, you use 2.5 for average hunger, 2 times 2.5. So when you add all these numbers together, 3 plus 1 is 4, plus 4 times 3 is 12. So 4 plus 12 is 16, plus this last one, 2 times 2.5, is 5. So
This is why
4,
you need James at your table when you're ordering, because he's doing all of this math in his head constantly. And so if he's there, we don't have to worry about it.
if you
It's
need help,
wonderful.
send me a text and like take a picture of the people, and then I will send you back the number to do this algorithm. You don't
Because
have to pay.
James, you do all the math. I'm gonna be eating, but you keep doing that math. Don't worry about
We're
me.
busy.
I'll just be eating everything on the table. So you do
Plug
your
in the
math.
numbers. I should create an app, and you just plug in hunger, child, age, like, and all this kind of stuff, and then you can find it over time. So this would tell you 21 dishes, and usually what will happen is it's like a perfect amount. If you need one more dish at the end, it's always better to slightly like order less, and you can always add. Sometimes it's not perfect, then you have to wait like an extra 10 minutes or 15 and everyone's kind of full. But usually this will deliver and people are satisfied. You don't want to be too full and you don't want people to be hungry. And if there's still room, the buffer, which is a really great buffer, is to add dessert. And so people are still a little hungry, then you can just add on top of it. But this, I think you do not need to, you don't need to adjust until you try it, and then you can kind of see where it goes.
Is there and I think Mehdi and Andrea were mentioning, it's like with my friends, like, just how much money do I need to bring? They're not like, what? I owe you 25 bucks. I only wanted to spend 10 bucks. Like if I just told everyone, be prepared to spend at least between, if you're if you're 7.5 hunger or 7 hunger, and like 2 dishes roughly, knowing that each dish costs sometimes different amounts.
Yeah.
Or the thing.
If if each dish costs around $6.50, and then there's a factor, many places charge for tea. And even if you only drink hot water, it's like they still might charge you. If you say, oh, I'm only drinking cold water or whatever, they may or may not charge you. If you're a child, they generally won't charge you. If you say we have young kids that don't drink tea, they won't, but otherwise it's like $2.25 for tea. So if you're assuming 2 dishes at around $6, 6 times, it's like 12 plus tea, 15 tax tip, that's already like 20 bucks right there.
Right.
So I think starting is 20. And then if you're on discount, you might be able to shave off 2 or 3 bucks, 17. So I think no less than that. An average, I would hit for 25 if you're ordering 2.5 dishes. And that includes some of the larger, most of them are large and medium, and maybe mostly large that are the like $7 range, plus or minus. And those are the better tasting ones. So if you want to kind of try those, great. If people don't have a lot of money and you want to kind of, you can order judiciously for maybe 2 dishes a person and try to fit for 20 bucks. 20 bucks is also an easy number just for people to pay. And then for those, I would order more carbs and more filling stuff versus these tasty bites, which is kind of what I'm doing, is I'm trying to reduce carbs, but certainly there are other ways to do it. And Mehdi has pointed out there's a rosewood all you can eat for about 35 bucks. And yeah, I've tried it once, and that's a lot of dim sum. It's hard to eat $35 worth of dim sum, but certainly you can do it. Any other questions? Hillary, did that help? The example, did that clarify? And good, I see a thumbs up. And Mehdi, thank you for sharing your experience eating dim sum. You are a dim sum ambassador for many hundreds of people in the world, and will continue to be. And I know you had it today, so missed you there. Okay.
I have a quick question for you, James. As a pescatarian, as you know, I eat both fish and vegetable dishes. Do vegetable dishes traditionally like cost less than meat dishes?
Like the vegetable dim sum dishes?
Yeah, like the vegetable dumplings.
The prices are the same on the menu.
Okay,
They might be like $1 cheaper. So the more costly ones are the shrimp dishes. Shrimp costs the most.
Yeah.
Beef might be like second, and then kind of pork. Yeah. So they might be slightly like by 1 rung. So it might be 5.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting because like often when I eat out at a non-dim sum restaurant, like a traditional North American style restaurant, my dishes being vegetarian would be, 2/3 the price of a meat dish. So I was just wondering if that same scale applied. It sounds like it.
Yeah. And I think recently, like vegetable prices have also like increased fairly significantly, and
Yeah.
labor is a big part of it. So I think
Makes
the
sense.
actual ingredients, the cost difference is not that much. But you do raise a good point, which I didn't cover note number 4, which is an important one. Menu if you want to order off the menu, so not the dim sum menu, but the regular menu where they have, you know, vegetable dishes or a noodle dish or fried rice or something, and someone wants fried rice and it's like, can we complement it? Sure, it's less common, but you know, and today, you know, I did that. Or you know, ordering vegetables is great because dim sum doesn't really have a lot of vegetables. And you know, if I was eating with you, April, and you know, some other people, we would be like, oh, why don't we get some vegetables? And it can be a really nice complement. So so if you do add a dish from the menu, and these cost like from 15 to 18, 20 bucks, that kind of thing, and price is kind of a guide, each dish is the equivalent of 3 dim sum dishes. So if you need 21 dishes and you order a vegetable dish, then subtract 3 from that, and you're going to get 18. 21 minus 3, 18 dim sum dishes. So you could get a vegetable, you get a noodle, and then all sorts of mixing and matching. I've done that sometimes, and for larger groups, it makes sense. If it's 1 or 2 people, and like, you know, and you're going to order 6 things between 2 people, ordering 1 vegetable dish could be a lot. So generally, you want maybe a slightly larger group if you want to order some of these dishes off the menu. Cool. All right. We will keep going as we're at 6, and I want to try finish in the next 5-10 minutes. And sorry to go over. Welcome, Donald. Thank you for joining. What to order? Here's a breakdown. So on this menu on the left side, these are steamed items. And then there's like another section for baked and fried, and you know, they might include deep fried. I like 65%-ish, maybe 70% of the dishes to be steamed. These are probably the best. Actually, the fried ones are also very good, but you know, healthy, and there are delicious steamed items. And so I definitely recommend you go more on those. When I've ordered more fried, 30%, 40, 50%, your mouth starts to feel like, ooh, I'm eating too much fried, and you get thirsty, and it kind of changes, you know, chemical composition in your body, and it doesn't feel as healthy. Steamed is healthier, and I think it's a nice balance with the other stuff. So this is kind of what I go for. So if you're ordering 10 dishes, you might get 6 or 7 steamed ones. Maybe you get 2 or 3 baked and deep fried ones, and kind of go from there. But you can certainly adjust from that. Here is a sample menu. So if you don't know what to get, I pulled this together, and these are some of my favorites, and you might have to adjust if you're pescatarians and all these sort of things, or don't eat certain things. Shrimp dumpling, top left, here, this picture, 4 pieces, a top choice. Chefs are judged based on their ability making shrimp dumplings. Pork dumplings, here, number 2, are also very good. There's a rice roll. That white thing uses rice flour, and it's kind of like a big noodle, and they have it with beef or vegetable. So beef is a nice one if to complement the shrimp. If you don't eat beef, they have ones with vegetable, which are nice. Or if you really like shrimp, you can get another shrimp one. So number 4 is the shrimp one. This is kind of what it looks like, the rice roll. It's a soft. The soy sauce here is a sweet soy sauce. It's different than regular soy sauce, which tends to be quite salty. So definitely if they offer you a soy sauce for the rice noodle, for this rice roll with shrimp or beef, use that soy sauce. Don't substitute another one. It'll be too salty. It's mixed with a bit more water and a bit more sugar, so it's sweetened and is a nicer complement. Number 5, sticky rice with chicken and lotus leaf. This one, lotus leaf, usually they serve 2 of them, and then they have rice and some other ingredients inside. It's steamed. It's really nice. And what I've done is shown a picture with it open. I know some people for the first time went to eat it and they ate the leaf as well. You're not supposed to eat the leaf. It kind of has a chewy, bitter taste. It's just meant to kind of hold it together and all that kind of stuff. Deep fried squid tentacles are a top choice, recommended if you haven't had it, if you like squid, kind of like calamari. Shrimp and chive dumplings near the bottom left. This is great. This is a pan-fried option that I really like, and not all restaurants have it, but if you can find it, it may be good. Restaurants make it differently, but you can find it. Here's another one. Deep fried glutinous rice dumpling. This has pork in it. If you do eat pork, but certainly if you don't, there are other options, or you can kind of substitute some of the other ones that you do like. I do have the vegetable that I would recommend, snow pea leaves with garlic and salt. And Mehdi has put a triple exclamation with the steamed shrimp dumplings with chives, which we've had before and which has been really good. Okay, I'm going to zip through these next 2 slides and just point out what's different. 10 dishes for 4 people with slightly adventurous eaters. Curry cuttlefish in the middle with the red is a nice choice. We have beef balls on the top right. Barbecue pork buns, I think is many people like. I don't usually order them, but this is a filler, and it's nice if people want to be filled. Beef ribs down here, and then there's congee, and they have different types of congee. This one has preserved pork and preserved egg, which is nice, and it's kind of like a rice chowder that that's nice as a complement and commonly eaten through the day. And if you're very adventurous, here's some other things that you may have heard of. Chicken feet in the middle, the red one, which I don't usually order, and I wouldn't order this as a first time. I think some people have said, oh, if you're going to go for dim sum, we have to get chicken feet, and you order all this exotic food, and people, if it's their first time, might be kind of, feel a little uncomfortable looking at, things that are uncommon. So generally I try to avoid, especially on the first time, just order standard good things. Top left is beef tripe, which I really like. This is a nice chewy texture, the ginger, and it's steamed and it's good. Bottom left, tofu, and this is a vegetarian dish. This is a nice one as well. Crunchy on the outside, they pan fry it. This is a nice compliment, and if you're a vegetarian eater, or this is a great choice. Bottom left, sesame seed balls. These are some dessert choices. Bottom middle is the sesame seed balls. Bottom right is molten egg in steamed bun, which is, it has like a very nice molten kind of sandy flavor with a sweet salty. I think it's a more modern dessert that originated from Hong Kong. Top right, egg tarts, a very common one, which is a great choice. And that concludes all the food. And just quickly on some tips, and then we'll open it up, and if people can stay or people need to get going, that's fine. Northern style dim sum is different than Cantonese style dim sum. So number 2, and just to build on that northern style, soup-filled dumplings are from Shanghai. That's considered like, well, north of Canton anyways. I would not get soup-filled dumplings in a Cantonese restaurant. I've seen them on the menus, and some people are like, oh, we have to get soup-filled dumplings. If you're in a Cantonese restaurant, either with carts or the menu, if they have shrimp dumplings and all these other things, I would not get it. Go to a Shanghai restaurant, a name with Shanghai in the name, or you might have to see like northern style food. Communal chopsticks are good to help serve food, or forks and knives in the world of hygiene. I think maybe 20 years ago, this was not common, but it's become more common, and certainly I think recommend it.
I remember as a kid, like I would go for yum cha with my family, and there would always be the green chopsticks, and no one would ever use them because those were the communal chopsticks. But I think now in post-COVID times, everyone uses the green chopsticks because those are the ones you don't put in your mouth.
Yeah. So just be careful. You're sharing food, and you don't want to mix germs. And certainly growing up, we were always very conscious about that. And so for me, pre-COVID, we were always encouraged. I've met people who do not use communal chopsticks, and it just seems a little odd. So number 4, tea, they sometimes charge. So just be wary of that. That can add like $2.50, $3. You can ask them up front. It's like, hey, if we don't get tea, if we just drink cold water, will you charge for it? And if they say no, then you're like, great, we'll get water. If students, and if you're trying to save a couple bucks, that's fine as well. But certainly tea is commonly drunk. There's a whole, I go for jasmine tea, but you can get like oolong tea, or they might have chrysanthemum tea, or different types.
Sometimes they also give you a pot of hot water, which you can either refill your own hot pot or teapot. But James, did you mention there are some places that will actually charge you for a pot of hot water?
Yeah. They will charge you for hot water because I guess they need to, the margins are so thin that they're charging for everything. So some places will give you a cash discount, some won't. Best just to ask. I ask all the time, and then if you have cash, then pay in cash. Rosewood gives a cash discount of I think 10% maybe. So there are places that do so. Number 5, we've talked about this formula. Multiply each person by 2.5, or adjust up or down. It could be 3, it could be 2. And then if you're still hungry, order after. And this way you'll avoid ordering like too many dishes for everybody, or people feeling like they need to finish it, or kind of not sure what happens. And number 6, have fun, make lots of noise. Andrea, you mentioned something about noise and dim sum.
Yes, because I love that you said make lots of noise, because I didn't realize that I must come from a family of very loud eaters, because when I moved to Australia, got to know my partner's family and realized that they all complain about how noisy their partners eat. And I was like, maybe it's just your family. It's just a family of ninja eaters. Like you don't even hear a sound. But my partner will often say, like, how can you make that banana sound like you're chewing glass? So I love this make lots of noise comment because it makes me feel less embarrassed about how loud I chew.
Yeah, I was gonna add to that, like knowing any good etiquette when people go or not go, or kind of sometimes mentally prepare them to say, hey, just so you know, like I understand slurping sounds in Japanese, like I understand those kinds of things, but like, you know, is there any kind of etiquette kind of rules there that you know of, James, or that's?
I don't like, I think a lot of families go on the weekends and bring kids and adults, and because it's family, people feel very comfortable, and it can get very noisy. And when all like a lot of the tables are these families or close friends, and you go with friends and you haven't seen each other and you're just chatting, like I think people feel that they can be themselves. So I think etiquettes are generally lower. Like it's not a formal event. You know, there are small things like, you know, tea and how you do things, you know, lift off the tea to get refills and things like that. But in terms of like decorum, I think the key thing is just, you know, the communal chopstick thing, have fun, you know, order from a menu, tick everything off, you know, set it up and then, you know, pay on your way out, that kind of stuff. So pretty standard restaurant stuff.
I gotta say that oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was just saying that the make lots of noise thing, it's interesting. I never realized this until you kind of said that. One of the things that I absolutely love about being at a dim sum restaurant is the sound of chopsticks hitting like the, you know, the bowls and the plates and things like that as you're eating. And to me, that's always been kind of this musical background to this experience that I'm having. And I just find it so awesome and beautiful. Like it's a really cool experience. And I never realized that before, but now that I think back on it, that's a sound that I kind of totally equate with having dim sum. It's just that click, click, click sound.
Great. Yeah, it's a fun environment.
Yeah.
University, yeah, when I was in Waterloo, you know, away from home, we had dim sum, a bunch of friends, and it was kind of a nice, you know, replacement for that family experience of eating together. Anyone have any other like experiences they want to share or comments that this might have inspired or
James, I like the part you talked about the, you know, if you need more hot water for your tea, you don't need a refill, you pick up the lid of the teapot and then put it and then rest it kind of like on the handle, between the handle and where it's supposed to be, right? It's really neat. That's something I don't know if it's actually necessary to do anymore, or do you just that? Yeah, if you leave that like the teapot like that on the table, someone's supposed to be, you know, to know and come and pick up a teapot and refill it.
yeah.
But, another thing that I don't know if it's, but growing up, if someone pours, you never. If you need more tea in your cup, so there's the etiquette part. If you need more tea yourself, you have to pour tea on, you know, maybe the 2 or 3 people around you first to make sure that their teacups are filled before you pour yours. You cannot pour yours, just pour yours and put down the teapot. So that's how, I don't know if it's a commonly thing, but you have to pour everybody else.
I know of that as well. So Linda, it sounds like you and I share the same experience. But also when somebody pours tea for you, you tap the table with 2 fingers to say thank you.
Tap, tap.
Yeah. And now, do you guys know about the mythology surrounding that? Because I often wonder if the stories my dad told me as a child, if they were just like his stories or if they belong to the whole culture.
It might be the culture, the one about like the emperor switched roles with someone because someone was trying to kill the emperor, and then the servant that was playing the emperor was receiving tea from the actual emperor who was pretending to be a servant, and to show thanks, the servant pretending to be emperor did this to indicate that he was kind of bowing down.
Oh, wow, neat, isn't?
Is that the story you've heard?
Yeah. And so because the emperor was doing it, everybody followed suit. So then from then on, anytime someone received tea, they would do this, but it was meant to be like, I'm bowing, even though I'm not allowed to bow right now.
Yeah. So this is a way to thank for tea. I've seen people kind of go 1-2, kind of like, thank you, like for delivering it on time with it, like a sharp.
I think it morphed into just tapping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
But certainly a light tap. It shouldn't be an aggressive tap. Just like a light tap is it's coming.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be bowing. It's not supposed to be like stabbing.
Yeah, it's not like chop 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 faster. Yeah.
Is there a do it with your left or right hand, like in Indian culture, you're not supposed to eat with your left hand kind of thing, because you wipe your butt with your left hand?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not in
that I'm
Chinese
aware of.
culture. I've heard that about the butt wiping. I was wondering if it was true.
Yeah, so not that I've heard. I mean, I just do it with my right, but maybe just because I'm right-handed normally. But yeah, I think either hand's okay. I don't think people are judging which hand is tapping. I do like the comment from Linda about like pouring tea for other people before yourself, and I think that just comes from not like being aware, like being in a community. You're eating with other people, they're your friends or they're your relatives, and you want to kind of respect them. So if there's like enough serving for one more person, you don't want to kind of take the last one and make other people wait if someone else wants tea. So you kind of just.
James, is it not from tea pouring culture? I always thought that because I was the youngest in my family, I'm supposed to pour the tea for everyone else, but also pour the tea in the hierarchy. So like guests, then from the oldest person to the younger person. So
That's
I
not
will
big
always get
deal,
tea last because I'm the kid in the family.
Yeah, there's some of that too. Yeah, for definitely. I'm lazy. I usually just go like, reach as far as I could, pour, and then come close to me, and then reach as far as I could on the other side, pour, and then back to me. But yeah, I think some people might have had to like stand up and then, pour across the table. I have no idea, but that might have.
Have you also heard that when you put the teapot back on the table, you have to make sure that the spout is not pointing at anybody.
Ooh,
Because it's meant to be a sign of wanting somebody to die.
that's advanced.
I've never heard that. That's interesting.
never heard that
Nobody's ever heard that. Okay. See, that's why I was wondering if my dad's stories were just my
Your
dad's.
family of assassins, maybe.
One last question for me, James. And I know in Japanese culture, how you say enryo no katamari. So like, do you mind if I have the last bite? There's always one piece left in Japanese culture. No one will touch it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, so when I take my students out to eat Timbits, there'll be always one left. I'm like, come on. And nobody will take it, like wherever we go out. So is there kind of that, is there something that you can say or do? Or is that just Japanese culture or?
Interesting. So my experience, but people can share. I guess there is a little bit like you don't want to take the last thing, and if other people want it. So I think what I've seen commonly done is, if you want something, is to offer it to other people. Some people actually offer it after they touch it with their chopsticks. And they're like, oh, does anyone want it? Don't do that, because it's like, well, you've touched it. Who's going to say yes? So I would say, you just kind of stand back and say, oh, there's another piece. Maybe you offer it to a few people. It's like, would you like it? Would you like it? Because in the end, you don't want to waste food. I think just in general, it doesn't feel like good practice. Certainly food, even without escalating food costs, it's like there's 8 billion people on the planet now. Food is scarce. People have worked hard for food. Don't just leave it there out of politeness. Finish it off. And if there's like 4 different bits and there's 4 people, usually I'll say, okay, 4 things, everyone choose one, or cut one in half and say, okay, everyone choose one, and everyone will get a little bit. So I understand this thing about not wanting to like appear like greedy and like grab the last of everything. So I think finding a kind of diplomatic and fair way to split, I think, is probably a good way. Offering to others, I think, is good, so that you don't waste. So I don't like to waste, and certainly will encourage people to do that. And so maybe there is something like, okay, there's 3 pieces left, let's each take one, and then and usually I'll default, I'll take the last one, I'll eat whatever. But certainly if people have a preference, then offer that. Just an idea. I don't know, do you think that would work? Or Anish? All right.
Great, thank you.
but I'll be careful with Japanese friends taking the last piece now. I think I will be like,
Actually have to
whoops.
teach them to say, if you actually want it, or just offer it, does anyone else want the last bite? If not,
Yeah,
you might
so you can-
have the last bite. At least offer it out. Otherwise, they just say nothing. I'm like, and it just
Yeah.
sit there and it's cold. I'm like, somebody take.
Yeah. And I think one other thing, like the older people in the group may want to offer it if people like younger ones might not feel like they should or could or have been told by their parents not to. So maybe someone kind of in charge might want to help to distribute. And you could ask them like, hey, you can, it's like a form of leadership of, you know, helping to disperse the food. And something takes a bit of finesse and doing it in a tasteful way. So it's a good skill to learn. And for your students, you can kind of train them on how to do it. Now, one other thing that's kind of interesting, as you mentioned this, is Japanese food is generally served individual serving. You get everything, even if you're only eating like 2 pickles, they're going to put it on a separate dish. When I was in Japan, I was like, that's such a waste of like washing and preparing. And my friend's wife, who's Taiwanese, so she's raised in like Chinese eating culture. When we went, we're like, oh, you know, we're all Chinese here. We can just share. She's like, no, I must insist that everyone get individual servings because that's how it's done in Japan. And then, you know, so Japanese people may not be used to kind of figuring out how to share that last piece because it's kind of not common. So hopefully you can introduce them to another way of eating, communal eating. You know, everyone get, you know, pros and cons, give and take. Some people get more of what they like and, you know, other things, and you share a little bit and everyone eats different quantities versus trying to give everyone the exact same amount of food and, you know, eat off their individual plates. So it's an experience that I think is good as well. Any other questions, comments? I know we're over time, and so appreciate whoever's stuck on, but I also want to be conscious of if people need to leave, please feel free. And Maddie, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so as someone who has introduced dim sum to some friends successfully, including today, I would just like to share my experience about the way that I approach to others to introduce dim sum. I think it's very important to mentally, like this mental preparation and transition for someone who has not tried a similar type of food in the past is very important. And I usually, when I introduce dim sum to some of my Persian friends, for example, I usually set expectations low, and I try to help them to come to a dim sum session with an open mind, because this is a totally new experience. And, you know, if the person is coming from a culture not having this type of food or something similar to that in the past, some people are just naturally more resistant. Some people are less resistant. Some people just at the first time that they try, they just fall in love with the food. So, you know, there are different types of reactions that you get. And, you know, I usually also don't get just disappointed because, you know, some people just, it takes a little bit time for them to, you know, realize the delicacy that, you know, you can find in this, you know, type of food. And I also help them with the selection for sure. It's not like I just give them the menu, you know, and say, you know, order whatever you like. So just helping them with the selection is also very important. And yeah, I wanted to share this experience with you.
Thank you for sharing. And Mehdi, thank you for being such an ambassador to dim sum. I introduced dim sum to Mehdi, and he's since introduced it to, I would like to say thousands of people, but it's less than that. But in my mind, it's just like a lot of people have tried it, and I think you've done a great job of introducing it, setting it up, and we can do a Farsi dim sum intro session as well. Sometime. And Hossein tried it, I think, through Mehdi as well. Is that the case?
Yes, exactly. I was introduced by Mehdi, yeah.
And I guess good experience, I think. And
yes,
yeah.
I think it was the Sky Dragon at the time that we went, if I remember correctly. Yeah, which was really good. Yeah.
Good. Donald and Kathy have joined, so welcome and hope you're enjoying the discussion. I don't know if you have any other comments that you want to share your dim sum experience, Kathy.
Yeah, sorry I joined it late. I have the time kind of messed it up, so I'm. But what I meant to say is often I find when my friend have dietary restriction, it's a bit tricky because they would ask me what is the exact ingredient. most dim sum, I'm like, okay, there's usually shrimp and maybe some pork in it and some other vegetable, but they will ask like, is there like seasoning or gluten, let's say, and I'm just like, I don't know. And usually being the only Asian at the table is almost feel like it's like my responsibility to know, but I don't. So that is a bit tricky. And I also find I have a few friends that actually is quite experienced in ordering, but then it become almost always they are ordering. And I'm just like, well, obviously people in general like to order what they like, but then I'm like, there's so much missed opportunity on all the things that's not being ordered. So I would try to pitch it, but then people also like the first time you're like, oh, like the texture, what is in it is a bit intimidating. So I'm just like, well, dim sum, there is so much variety. So I find it's kind of difficult to get others to be comfortable ordering what they want as well, because like the first time seems very intimidating.
Yeah. Interesting. And like, that makes me think, like, usually when I've introduced it for the first time to some people, I'll order like standard, I think things that are generally have like broader appeal. And if they like it, then over time you can start experimenting one at a time with some different things. Yeah, I find you don't want to experiment too much, but certainly there are a lot of options. So you do want to kind of try new things and see what they're like. I know with Medi, we ordered a lot of shrimp dishes, and initially we were trying to figure out like what can Medi eat and what are the things, and we found some things and we ordered it regularly, and then we started branching out. And so now Medi's kind of an expert on different things and has tasted them in different restaurants, including and even at different times, like the morning versus the afternoon. He started to comment on the morning quality of the food versus the afternoon, which I thought was very interesting. So
that is a very big luxury in Toronto, because here there is around 3 good dim sum restaurants and one just closed down because it didn't survive the pandemic. So now there's only 2 good restaurants. So the selection and the competitiveness is seriously nothing like Toronto. So is the quality. So yeah.
Well, if you make it back to Toronto for a visit, then we can go for dim sum, Kathy. And just one quick funny story, since Kathy spoke on that, we've been to dim sum many times when she was living in Toronto, down at Dim Sum King. And there was one place that had, I think it was discounted dim sum until 10:45. And on the spur of the moment, I get a text at 10 a.m. It's like, James, hey, do you want to go for dim sum? And I was like, oh my God, like, can we make the early bird? And, I have to get ready. And then, so she's like, she's ready to go. She'll meet me there. And we'll try to order as much as we can before the early bird specials expire. And when she got there, she was running around with the ordering checklist where they can kind of mark down and set the prices, getting a whole bunch of stuff. And when I got there, she was out of breath. She's like, okay, James, it was like a tag team relay. She's like, you take over. And then I started chasing down all the carts and then getting all the food to hit. And I think it cost like $13 and was very, very satisfying despite having to run around. So that was kind of a fun thing. I don't think those happen anymore. And, but
great teamwork there.
But it was a memorable experience. So
can we expect dim sum with James' book in the near future?
Oh, I'm glad you asked.
Amazing stories.
So I would like to say I'm writing a book. I've thought about writing a book on like food ordering and things, but we shall see. At least maybe I'll put this in a PDF, and if anyone's interested in these tips, I'm happy to share, and we'll do more. And if people want to have dim sum in person here anywhere, like drop me a note and we'll eat. I know Donald, I don't know if we've had dim sum. Certainly I've seen your posts on dim sum and we've traded notes and things. And oh no, we have had dim sum together. Yeah, and Toronto's a great place for it, and as are a lot of other places. So with that, Andrea, do you have any closing words?
Well, Medi said we also need an app in addition to your book. So
okay.
We look
app and book. I'll need lots of help. If anyone wants to help kind of create this is like the beginning of a journey, and there's a lot of interesting, fun things to talk about food-wise.
Wow.
So.
Actually, yeah, you can do like photos, explanations and stuff, right? And then, how do you score this particular shrimp dumpling? What do you look for? Cool. Yeah, it could be on the app.
Yes. Thank you, Hossein. If you need to drop off, please do, if anyone else does, but we will kind of wrap it up. So Closing thoughts. I think that's great. Oh, if you have any topics for another thing, advanced topics, everyone seems to know dim sum. So, or
I have the advanced topic.
yes.
Or not so much topic, but something that maybe in the future session we can discuss is different countries dim sum. So when you're traveling to like for example, Panama had a pretty big Asian population, and when I went, the dim sum, everything tastes slightly different. But I noticed the seafood size, like shrimp size and stuff, are all a lot smaller, which was exactly opposite of what I was expecting. So
right.
I found like different country, how they do dim sum is a bit different too. So maybe that would be a good topic to talk about.
Okay, I will travel the world and collect stories, and every country I travel to, we'll have like I'll be in a dim sum restaurant, we'll do it live from Ecuador or whatever, or people can join me.
Chicken soup for the dim sum soul.
There, thank you for the title. I love these suggestions, and look forward to dim sum with your students, Anish.
For my advanced topic, I'd like to learn a little bit more between the northern dim sum and the southern dim sum. You
That's a
mentioned
great one.
Asian legend, and I think you and I have eaten there many times, but I don't know if I noticed the difference. So I think there's some nuances that I need to explore as an advanced topic.
Great. Yes, I have lots to say on that as well. So great suggestion, April.
I know it depends on the restaurant you go to, but if you order in Mandarin, like 我不会讲广东话，我不会讲国语，我们讲广东话，怎么样? Like, would anyone be offended if you did order in Mandarin, generally speaking, or like, is Cantonese preferred? They just all know if the order is in Mandarin anyway.
Yeah, I think all Cantonese restaurants will have Mandarin speakers as well. In Toronto, not around the world, but certainly in Toronto. So I think you can order in any language. All the times I've spoken in Mandarin, I think I've almost never felt condescended to because I'm speaking Mandarin. Whereas before, I used to feel like, oh, they're kind of like, oh, you don't speak Cantonese, like, and either they didn't speak Mandarin and couldn't respond, or they're just like, oh, no, I'm not going to talk to you in Mandarin.
Generally, they really appreciate you making the effort and the attempt, so that's always nice.
But certainly, if you can speak Mandarin, Anish, and you do, like, the waiters and waitresses' eyes always light up when you're like, oh, you speak Mandarin, great.
Their eyes will light up if you're not of Asian descent. Whereas if I go in and I start speaking my crappy ass Chinese in any dialect, I'm just shameful. So Anish, good on you.
That shouldn't stop you anyway, regardless of what they're thinking. Do it anyway.
Little by little. Thank you. Thank you.
I have the opposite experience that I just assume they speak either Cantonese or Mandarin, and then they only speak English. But because again, it's probably sounded very racist, but because they look Asian, so I just assume one of the two language usually works, and then they're like, no.
Is this in Halifax?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe there are not a lot of Chinese servers out there, and they just get anybody who kind of looks close.
And when I was in Paris.
Oh, in Paris.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was just kind of like taking it back. I'm like, I don't speak French. So if you don't speak, well, good that English was the good common ground, but I don't speak any French. So that was an issue. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Chinese. There are a lot of Vietnamese people in Paris, but so maybe you get more of that. Great. All right, we'll close there. Thank you so much. I know we went longer, but I appreciate everyone staying on, and you know, even if you have to drop off, that's great.
Thank you so much for sharing your decades of knowledge and experience and your finely tuned multi-step process. We're all going to go out and apply it, and we'll tag you in our photos.
Perfect.
And your presentation was very good, James. Thank you so much. It was very clear. It was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the feedback and support, Mehdi.
Can we give the gift of James for Christmas?
Sounds
Dim
good.
sum with James will cover your meal.
All right, sounds good. I look forward to having dim sum with everybody at some point again soon. Linda, we haven't had dim sum in a couple of decades, I think. But hope maybe you can tell me where the good places to go in Markham are. April, we'll meet again soon. Kathy, it'll be a while, and Donald, see you soon. And Andrea, thank you so much for co-hosting. That was great. And Anish as well, thank you. Have a good night. Have a great Sunday.
Awesome. Bye, guys.
Good night. Bye. Bye.